So good evening to all. This is our fourth session of the course, Computational Fluid Dynamics. In our previous lecture, we had discussion on the classification of partial differential equations, and we have come up with the idea that we are having three different natures of the partial differential equations, which are hyperbolic, elliptic, and parabolic. Okay. Now, let us try to see that what are the specific features of each of these partial differential equations and how these helps us in developing the numerical techniques for their solution. Okay, and apart from this also we will try to see some of the governing equations related to fluid flow and heat transfer phenomenon which actually falls under this category. Okay, so let me first talk about nature of hyperbolic equations. Okay, so I will first talk about hyperbolic equations. So what I will do over here, let me draw first the xy coordinate system, and we have seen in our previous lecture that the hyperbolic type of equations shows two characteristics. Okay, so we will be having two characteristics when type of the equation is nothing but hyperbolic. Okay, so what I have done, if you recall, I have earlier taken some point P, and while explaining you the concept of characteristics, I have drawn one dashed line. Okay, so that particular dashed line I have called as nothing but my characteristic line. Okay, now we have seen in the previous lecture that in case of hyperbolic equations, we will be having two characteristics lines. So it means apart from this one dashed line, I will be having one more line over here. Okay, so let me draw one more line. So this is my second characteristic because we are having two types of characteristics over here. Okay, so now you can see I have this xy plane, and in this xy plane I have taken some point P, and over this point P, so this point is actually arbitrarily selected, and at this point I have tried to find the characteristic lines of governing equations. So I have got, say, these two characteristics. Okay, so these two dashed lines represents nothing but two different characteristic lines. Okay, now you can see what we have told. We have told that along this particular line, the highest order derivative of our equation will be indeterminate. So it means the only determinant value of derivative will be in the region within the line or away from these lines. So for example, in this particular zone over here, in this particular zone, if you follow my cursor, in this particular zone, we will be having determinate derivative, and then obviously outside these lines also we will be having determinant, and over the lines we will be having indeterminate. Okay, so now if you see, if say this is my point P, and at this point P, if I add some perturbation, okay, so I was having some phenomenon which was happening, and what I did, I have provided some perturbation at point P. So now how this perturbation at point P will affect the behavior of the system in different zones. So you can see this the region which is ahead of point P in the x direction, this is the region over here. So whatever the region now I am hatching, this hatched portion over here is nothing, the region which is ahead of point P in x direction, and this is the region which is bounded between the two characteristic lines. So it means whatever the perturbation I am providing over here, because that perturbation, the derivative of higher order terms will not be existing along the characteristic lines. So only the effect of that perturbation will be felt in the region which is bounded by these two lines. Okay, so that's why this hatched portion over here is nothing but known as domain of influence for point P. Okay, so if at point P, at particular point P, if I am creating some perturbation, that perturbation will be affecting the area in our domain which I have actually shown over here. Okay, and similarly, if you see, if I have to say solve this particular using this particular flow field, say using the numerical solution. So what I will be doing, behind point P also we are having some region which is actually bounded by the characteristic lines. So let me show this region with actually double hatched lines. So now I am using double hatching for the zone which is actually a region which is behind point P. So this particular region, whatever the solution we will be getting or whatever our boundary conditions say, I will be applying in between these points A and B. Whatever boundary condition I will be applying in between points A and B. Obviously, while I will be numerically solving, I have to apply boundary condition for this entire value at x equal to 0. Okay, entire line. But the region of the boundary condition which is in between points A and B, that will be only affecting the property of our flow parameters at point B. Okay, so the region which I have shown with double hatched lines over here, this region is nothing but my domain of dependence for P. So this is domain of dependence for point P. So it means the region which is actually bounded in between the characteristic lines and preceded by any point P in the flow field through which our characteristic lines are passing, that particular region actually affects the solution at point P. So that's why this is called as domain of dependence for point P. Okay. Whereas the region which is actually succeeded by the point P and bounded in between our characteristic lines which is passing through point P, so that particular region will be called as domain of influence for point P. Okay, so this is one very, very important information. It means if I have to study the value of property at point P, I should consider only the region which is bounded by these two characteristic lines. So it means I have to take care of this thing while I will be developing any numerical scheme for finding the solution at point P. I have to consider that numerical scheme should include the domain of dependence, value of properties in the domain of dependence for obtaining value of property at point P. Okay. Similarly, if I have to calculate in the domain of influence, then I should know the value of point P. Similarly, if I take any say other point C over here, so obviously through this point C also I will be having some characteristic lines which will be passing. So obviously for point number C, I will be having some separate domain of dependence and separate domain of influence. Okay, so this is how, like, physically we can infer that how our data or how our information will be propagating while we are having the nature of equations as nothing but hyperbolic. Okay, now let me take next type of equation. So next type of equations is our parabolic. Okay, so in case of parabolic equations, well, what will be happening? We know in case of parabolic equations, we are having one unique characteristic. Okay, so here we are having one unique characteristic. Okay, so here what will be happening? Let me take, say, XY plane, and say in this XY plane I have my domain as A, B and C to D. This is my overall domain. Okay, and say I'm having some point over here as my point P. So now one important thing we have understood, that while we are having parabolic type equations, we will be only having one characteristic line. Okay, so let me consider that this is my characteristic line over here, which is passing through point P. Okay, so now you can see, if I do any perturbation over here at point P, the effect of that perturbation will be only felt in the region which is on the right side of point P, because over here along this particular dashed line we are having the discontinuity. Okay, over this particular line the determinant of highest order derivatives is not existing, so it means this information cannot cross on the back side. So whatever the information I will be having, that information will be only propagating in the forward side of our characteristic line. Okay, so what will be happening over here? If you see any value which is actually behind this characteristic line, that will be affecting the value of property at point P, and if I do any perturbation at point number P, that will be only affecting the region which is ahead of this particular line. Okay, so say if I know the value of properties at point P and I need to determine the properties at the subsequent points in the right hand direction, so what I have to do, I have to march the solution from left side to right side along the x direction. Okay, so this is how what we are having in case of parabolic equations. We are only having one unique characteristic. Okay, and that unique characteristic defines a specific direction along which only our information will be propagating. Okay, so this kind of equations are also so the solution of this kind of equations is also called as marching solution. So why it is called as marching solution, that I will be explaining you with a few examples. Okay, so but the only thing which we have to know at this particular point, that we are having a unique characteristic line and information will be only propagating in a single direction to that of the characteristic line. Okay, then we have another type of equations, elliptic equations, and in case of elliptic equations, we have seen that our roots of the characteristic equation will be nothing but complex. So if roots are complex, it means we will not be able to specify any particular unique direction along which our information will be propagating. Okay, so that's why what happens in case of elliptic equations, information propagates uniformly in all the directions at very rapid rate. Okay, so let me show you one example. So if say I have this x and y, and on this x, so I say I have some domain a, b, c, d. Okay, so this is my domain. Now in this domain, if I take any point P, so now because I have complex roots of this particular characteristic equation for elliptic nature, that's why I will not be able to draw any specific characteristic direction over here. Okay, so because of which what will be happening over here, my information will be uniformly propagating in all the directions. Okay, so information will be uniformly propagating in all the directions, and if I say do perturb any of the property at point P, its effect will be felt in each and every direction. And moreover, while we are having elliptic type of equations, the propagation of the property in all the directions will be at very, very rapid rate. Okay, so this is one specific feature of the elliptic equations, that if we do perturbation at any point within our flow field, that perturbation will be uniformly propagating in all the directions at some at very rapid rate. Okay, so that's why whatever effect we will be, whatever perturbation we will be producing over here, that will be affecting all our boundaries. Okay, similarly, if I take the other way, if I have say some value of properties at boundaries, so the value of property at all the boundaries will be actually affecting the common property which we are obtaining at point P. So obviously the transfer of information can be from inward to outward direction, or it can be from outward to inward direction, depending upon the nature of boundary conditions we are having. For example, if I take this as a heated block, and if I consider that I have some heating element at the center, and all my boundary temperatures are less in comparison to the temperature at the center. So in that case, what will be happening? That temperature field will be uniformly propagating in all the directions. Okay, and if I take the other condition, let's say at this point number P, I have some heat sink whose temperature, which is maintaining temperature at point P less than the temperature of all the boundaries. So in that case, what will be happening? These boundaries will actually try to influence the temperature at point P. So all the information will be actually transferring from boundary, and that will be affecting the solution at any point within the domain. Okay, so that's why this type of problems are also called as boundary value problems. Okay, because whatever the value of properties we are having at boundaries, that actually affects the solution at points within our simulation domain. Okay, now let me take specific examples of each type of equations. Okay, so yes, Abhishek.
Yeah, sir, I have a question. Like for if we have diffusion equation,
Yes,
then that will be parabolic, right?
diffusion equation will be, we will see over there in examples. Okay, so if you see diffusion equation will show elliptic nature, not parabolic.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Okay, so now if I talk about some of the examples, let me take first example as, say I have a equation, say del phi by del t. Okay, say this is equal to alpha times del square, or let me write, consider in place of phi I am writing t. Let me write down conduction equation. Okay, one dimensional conduction equation. So I have equation, say del t by del t equal to alpha times del square t by del x square. Can you tell me what is the nature of this equation? So for this equation, I can write it alpha times del square t by del x square minus del t by del t equal to 0. Okay, so what we will be doing, this particular equation we will be comparing with a del square t by del x square plus b del square t by del x del y plus c del square t divided by del y square plus d del t by del x plus e del t by del y plus f equal to 0. So with this equation we will be comparing. So now if you compare, can you tell me what is the value of A? A is equal to
Alpha.
B is equal to 0 and C is equal to 0. Okay. So now if I calculate over here B square minus 4AC, what I am getting? 0. So it means this particular equation is nothing but having what kind of nature? Parabolic nature. Okay, so this particular equation, which is nothing but our transient one-dimensional heat conduction equation, it is showing nothing but a parabolic behavior. Okay.
Sir, I was talking about this only, this diffusion equation inventing. So, sir, in this case,
yeah.
yes, sir, if we will see the definition of what like temperature field, what is happening, so it is distributing randomly due to convection, due to conduction. So, isn't
Not
this
randomly,
the
let me
nature of the elliptical equation?
Okay, let me correct you. Not randomly first. What we are having, this is dissipating uniformly in all directions. Okay, rapid rate, at rapid rate uniformly in all directions, not randomly. Okay, now let me, I will be now discussing about one physical example, and that physical example will be clarifying your this particular doubt. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Okay, so now let me consider that I have some rod. Okay, so this is my rod, and say this rod is initially maintained at some temperature Ti when time T is equal to 0. Okay, so if I now plot the corresponding x versus temperature profile. So what I am doing, I am plotting x versus temperature profile. So this is capital T, temperature. Okay. So if I plot x versus temperature profile at time t is equal to 0, in my entire rod I have temperature as nothing but equal to, say this is my temperature Ti. So this is existing when time t is equal to 0. Now let us consider at some time t equal to t1, one face of this rod, say left face of this rod, I have subjected to some temperature t1. Okay, so this is kind of an impulsive condition I have given. So initially my temperature was Ti over the entire rod. Now only one phase suddenly at some time t equal to t1, I have imposed at x equal to 0, I have imposed the condition t equal to t1, and I am saying that t1 is very large in comparison to initial temperature Ti. So this is nothing but a impulsive kind of condition. So I have immediately added some highest temperature condition over here. Okay, so in that case, what will be happening? If you see the temperature of this particular left face will be what? It will be T1, whereas temperature in remaining portions of the rod, what will be temperature in remaining portions of the rod? It will be equal to
Yes.
it will be equal to Ti. Okay, so if I say that we are having over here, because we are having over here the conduction effect also, so obviously temperature information will be rapidly propagating into the rod also towards the right side. So say I am taking that this is my temperature profile at time t equal to T1. This point is correct. Now what will be happening? What will be happening if I go to some another time t2 which is greater than t1? What will be happening? Further, I will be finding at time t2, I will be having more transfer of heat along the length of the rod, and my temperature will be increasing further. So this will be situation for some time t equal to t2. Then if I take some another time t3 which is greater than t2, further I will be finding some progress. Okay, and then finally when my time will be approaching to infinity, in that case what will be happening? I will be having development of some linear temperature gradient within the rod. Okay, because it's a one-dimensional situation. So that will be happening when my temperature is approaching to infinity. Okay, so in this particular situation, if you see what is happening at time t equal to 0, we were having some solution over the entire rod, temperature as Ti. But when we have gone to some time t1, we have imposed certain impulsive condition, and that impulsive condition has given rise to some temperature field. And when we have actually gone to some time t2, then further there is actually propagation of the solution along the time. Okay, so the solution at time t equal to t2 is nothing but dependent upon the solution at time t equal to t1. Similarly, solution at some other time t3 is dependent upon the solution at time t equal to t2. Okay, so what we are basically doing, our solution is propagating in time, or I can say our solution is marching in time. So at initial time, I have some value of the solution as known, and with that initial value, we are actually marching our solution in time. Okay, so you can see over here mathematically also, if you see, we are having del t by t equal to alpha times del square t by del x square. So it's a first order derivative in time. So that's why we have to supply one initial condition to find out the solution of this type of equation. Okay, so that's why over here you can see that whatever the solution we are having at time t equal to t1, that is depending upon the solution at time t equal to 0. Similarly, whatever the solution I am calculating at time t equal to t2, that is depending upon solution at time t equal to t1. And over here we have the order of time as t3 is greater than t2 is greater than t1, and that is greater than 0. So it means our solution is marching in time. So that's why in case of parabolic equations, we are having some specific direction, and in that direction only, in that forward direction only, our solution will be marching, and we cannot go into the backward direction. Okay. And the example which I have taken over here, this is nothing but involving a time term, and we always know that we cannot move back in the time, means we cannot go into past. Rather, based on the present, we can actually comment on the future. So that's why whatever I am telling over here, the nature of this parabolic equation, that is well fitting into the nature of the equation, that we are moving in a unique forward direction and we cannot go back into time. Okay. Now, if you see in this particular equation, we are having some del square t by del x term also. So del square t by del x square term also. Okay. So that term basically is responsible for transfer of this temperature field along the length of the rod. Okay. So that is nothing but our diffusion term, and this diffusion term is significantly controlled by our boundary conditions, because while I have told you that initially when all the boundaries were maintained at temperature Ti, which was equal to that of the temperature within the length of the rod, at that time no phenomena was happening. Okay, so everything was at the equilibrium condition. But as I changed the boundary, that change of the boundary condition has actually resulted in changes of the field variable within the domain. So that's why over here, mathematically, if we are seeing, though mathematical nature of the equation is parabolic, and moreover, the solution of this equation also we are able to obtain by marching in forward time direction. Okay, but this particular equation is also showing some behavior of diffusion field which is actually affected by the boundary condition. Okay, so this particular behavior is affected by the boundary condition. So as this behavior is affected by the boundary condition, so physically if we see, we have to say that this particular equation is parabolic in time and elliptic in space. Is this point clear? Abhishek, now I think your doubt is answered. This is what you were asking.
Okay, sir. Sir, in addition to that, if we have multiple spatial coordinates, then for checking the this nature of the equation, do we consider only two independent variables at a time?
I will tell you that also. Okay, so I will deal with one of the example, including the complete three-dimensional conduction equation. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Okay, so here what we are having, we have our equation parabolic in time and elliptic in space if we see the physical nature of this particular equation. Okay, now let me take up another example. So in another example, let me write only say our two-dimensional conduction equation. Okay, so if I write two-dimensional conduction equation, I can write del square T by del x square plus del square T divided by del y square equal to 0. Okay, so if you now find out what is the nature of this equation, what we will be getting? We are having A equal to 1, B equal to 0, and C equal to 1. So if you calculate B square minus 4AC, how much it is? It is
-4.
So it means the nature of equation is elliptic. Okay, so that's why when I will be considering a two-dimensional domain, say this is my x, this is my y coordinate. So in this two-dimensional domain, when I have to find out the solution of this particular equation, the solution of this particular equation will be requiring the knowledge of all the boundary conditions. Is it clear? So whatever the boundary conditions we are having, their knowledge will be required in order to find out the solution at any point P within our entire domain. Okay, so boundary equations will be actually affecting our solution. Now, one important point I would like to highlight over here with reference to the elliptic equations. Say if I consider that in my domain, I have maintained these two boundaries as very hot. So these two boundaries are say very hot, and say other two boundaries, this and these two boundaries are very cold. Okay, so say one is these two cold boundaries are having temperature of 0 degrees Celsius, and these two hot boundaries are having say temperature of 100 degrees Celsius. So in that case, what will be happening? We will be finding that at these two corner points, we will be having some discontinuities. Okay, is this point clear? At some corner points, because of the boundary conditions which we are imposing, these boundary conditions will be actually giving some discontinuities. But while we will be solving for these boundary conditions, we will be finding that at every point within our flow domain or within our domain of interest, everywhere the value of field parameter will be continuous. Okay. So what I am saying, we may have a situation in case of elliptic boundary condition where near to the boundaries we are having some discontinuities because of the imposed conditions. But within the domain we will be always getting the continuous behavior. Why? Because whatever the information we are having at boundaries, that information will rapidly propagate in all the directions. So that information will be rapid propagating. So because of the rapid propagation of difference of temperature between the two boundaries, that effect of discontinuity will be nullified. Okay, so that is one very important understanding about the elliptic equations. So elliptic equations basically result in rapid transfer of information. Okay, then let us consider third type of equation. So third type of equation, say I have del square t by del t square, or let me write in place of t phi, del square phi by del t square equal to say c times del square phi divided by del x square. So what is this equation? I think this is a very fundamental familiar equation to most of us. Can you tell me the name of this equation?
Wave equation.
Yes, this is a wave equation. So if you see in this wave equation, I will be getting c times del square phi by del x square minus del square phi by del t square equal to 0. So what will be the value? A will be c, b will be 0, and c will be minus 1. Okay, so if I see over here, my b square minus 4ac is how much?
4c.
Plus 4c. So it means this equation is nothing but of hyperbolic nature. Okay, so if this equation is of hyperbolic nature, in this case what will be happening? Once again we will be having some specific direction between the characteristic lines in which our information will be propagating. Okay, because for hyperbolic equations we have seen that we are having solution is marching also, and while it is marching in actually very specified domain. Okay, so domain is actually bounded by the two system characteristics. Now when we will be finding the solution of these equations, we will be finding that hyperbolic equations are most difficult to solve. Okay, now let me take some more examples. So another example I would like to now tell you. I have told you that in case of parabolic equations, our solution is nothing but marching. Okay, and this marching solution holds very good while we are actually considering one of the parameter as time, because in time we cannot move into past, it will be actually moving in the forward direction. Can you name me one example where we are having marching of solution in forward direction only along the space parameter? So can you think of an example from your knowledge of fluid mechanics? If you know,
Pipe flow.
sorry?
Pipe flow.
Yes, it's correct. So what is happening, for example, I am giving even the more trivial example. Let me consider that I have one infinite length plate. So if I have one infinite length plate and let's say flow is happening over this infinite length plate. Now what will be happening? We see that we will be having development of some viscous dominant region, and that particular viscous dominant region is nothing but known as our boundary layer. Okay, and outside we will be having some inviscid region. Okay, now over here you can see, while we will be solving our momentum equation for this particular type of flow behavior, we will be having both convective and diffusion term. Okay, so the nature of diffusion term is that it will try to propagate the information uniformly in all directions. So it means diffusion term will try to create its effect in the backward direction also. But we are having dominance of inertia over here, and this dominance of inertia will be such that it will try to make the flow of information only from left to right direction. Okay, so that's why if I have to say determine the value of boundary layer thickness delta x at any location along the length of the plate, that will be depending upon the value of delta at that will be actually depending upon the value of delta just previous to it, or in other way I can say that the value of delta at any present location will affect the value of delta in the forward direction. Okay, so over here in this example you can see that though we are having diffusion included, but this convection term, because of the very high inertia of the fluid, is more dominant over the viscous term. So that's why in place of having instead of having even diffusion equation in our term, equation is still propagating in one unique direction. Okay, so over here we are doing nothing but we are marching in positive x direction. Say if I consider this point is x equal to 0. So it means we are marching over here in positive x direction. So we may have some physical situation where apart from time also, in terms of spatial parameter also, we can march in the forward direction. Okay. Now let me take one more very interesting example. So, yes.
Sir, if we will see the equation of, Navier-Stokes equation, then the convective term is of the order of 1.
Yes.
And it should not affect the nature of the equation.
Okay, so let me tell you now once again, I will take one more example over here, which will show that how first order equation can be categorized into hyperbolic, parabolic, or elliptic. Okay, so that part also I will be doing subsequently. You are asking majority of the questions which I will be telling you. Okay, so let me now take up one equation which is 1 minus m infinity square times del square phi divided by del x square plus del square phi divided by del y square is equal to 0. Okay, so can you tell me what kind of physical behavior this equation represents? So probably if you have studied about the compressible flow, so this m infinity I am referring over here as nothing but Mach number of the far stream. Okay, and this phi is my velocity potential function. So this is nothing but the equation of velocity potential function for isentropic compressible inviscid flow. Okay, so once again I am repeating, this is equation for velocity potential function in isentropic inviscid compressible flow. Okay, so now let me give you one more formulation, another formulation where by knowing the eigenvalues we can actually comment on the nature of the equation. Okay, so what we will be doing, I will consider, say, summation. I am taking over I comma j, and I am writing some equation, summation of aij del square phi divided by del xi xj plus bij equal to 0. So what is the meaning of this equation, which I have written in the summation form? So the meaning of this equation, if I expand this equation, say for my three-dimensional behavior, so for three-dimensional behavior, the value of this equation will be I will be equal to 1, 2, comma 3, and similarly j will also be 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so now what will be happening? I can write a11 when I and j both are 1, then this summation term, first term I can say a11 times del square phi divided by del x square. Now let me consider that x1 is nothing but my x direction, x2 is y direction, and x3 is z direction. Is this point clear? So x1 I am considering as x, x2 y, and x3 as z. So now if I expand this equation by knowing these values, whatever I have written, I can expand this as a11 into del square phi by del x square plus a12 into del square phi by del x del y plus a13 into del square phi by del x del z plus, now what I will be doing, I will be making I as 2 and j then I will be varying for I equal to 2. So that will be becoming equal to a21 into del square phi by del y del x plus a22 into del square phi by del y square plus a23 into what I will be having, a23 into del square phi by del y del z plus, now I will be shifting this I to 3. So a31 into del square phi by del z del x plus a32 into del square phi by so 3 I am considering del z del y plus a33 into del square phi divided by del z square. Okay, plus some bij equal to 0. So this is my generic equation over here. If I expand it for 3 dimensions, now from here I will be getting some matrix. So I will be getting some A matrix from here, which will be A11, A12, A13, A21, A22, A23, A31, 32, and 33. And based on the eigenvalues of this matrix, based on eigenvalues of this matrix, I can comment on the nature of the equation. Okay, so let me now give you one more example, which actually Abhishek has asked earlier. That if we are having, say, 3-dimensional conduction equation, del square t by del x square plus del square t by del y square plus del square t by del z square. Abhishek and all others, can you now classify this equation?
Laplacian.
That's okay, but if you have to say it is elliptic, parabolic, or hyperbolic, can you find out? Please answer. Say yes or no.
Yes, sir.
Parabolic.
Okay, but how to find out? Have you got the idea?
Yes, sir.
Sir, it's
Finding the
elliptic.
argument.
So basically what you have to do, you see this equation, you have to write with this general form, whatever I have told you over here. So this is a three-dimensional equation. So you have to, so what you are having only the terms involving del square phi by del x square, del square phi by del y square, and del square phi by del z square. If I replace phi with t, so in that case I will be getting my A matrix as 1 0 0 0 1 0 0 0 1. And if I calculate the eigenvalues of this matrix, then based on the nature of the eigenvalues, as I explained in the previous lecture, we can comment whether our equation is hyperbolic, parabolic, or elliptic. Okay, so this one example I have included just to show that how we can determine a characteristic matrix. Okay. Now let me take this example. Somehow in between I left it. So it is, my equation is 1 minus m infinity square del square phi by del x square plus del square phi by del y square. So if you see, the nature of this equation is nothing but two-dimensional. Okay. So as the nature of equation is two-dimensional, I will be having my characteristic matrix also nothing but two-dimensional. So what will be the coefficients? Can you tell me? 1 minus m infinity square, when I don't have
0.
term involving x, y.
0 0 1.
0 and then 1. Now can you find out the eigenvalues? What we have to do? Determinant of A minus lambda I equal to 0. So if I take the determinant 1 minus,
Sir, it will be directly 1 minus m square and 1, because it's a triangular matrix.
yes, so I will be finally getting lambda equal to 1 and lambda equal to 1 minus m infinity square. Now can you all comment about the nature of this particular equation?
Sir, it will depend on m theta.
Yes. So let me now discuss. So what we are having, lambda equal to 1 and lambda is equal to 1 minus m infinity square. So when my m infinity is equal to 1, in that case what will be happening? One of the eigenvalue is becoming 0. The nature of the equation will be parabolic. Okay, when my Mach number is equal to 1. And when my Mach number is greater than 1, when Mach number is greater than 1, then my equations are becoming of, eigenvalues are of opposite signs. Okay, so because of which the nature of equation will be hyperbolic. And when m infinity is less than 1, in that case, this equation will be behaving as nothing but my elliptic equation. Okay. So now, if I represent you physically some phenomenon which shows this mixed type of nature, let me give you one example. Let me consider that I have some wedge section over here. Okay. And over this wedge section, some flow is happening, and obviously flow is happening at very high Mach number. So I am considering over here, say my Mach. Okay, so I was telling that over here, my Mach number is greater than 1. Okay, so if it is greater than 1, here flow will be supersonic. Okay, and while this supersonic flow will be coming over the wedge, we will be finding that we will be having some detached shock wave over here. So this is my detached shock wave over here. So this is coming from the knowledge of compressible flow. Okay, so I have high Mach number flow. Mach number is greater than 1, and that high Mach number flow is happening over a wedge. Okay, and say I am getting some detached shock wave. So you all know what is shock wave. Shock wave is nothing but some discontinuity at which our flow parameters are not defined. Okay, and we are having sudden transition in our flow parameters at this particular shock wave. So now you can see in this detached shock wave, what will be happening here? It will be having, in the closer zone, it will be having very strong influence, and away from that, its influence will be actually slowly decreasing. Okay. So similarly, in this side also, we will be having strong influence in the zone which is close to the wedge section, and in the far field, its influence will become weak. Okay. So what will be happening in this zone of the shock wave? We will be finding that here we will be having sudden increase of pressure. So in the upstream of the shock wave, say we are having some P1 pressure, and say this Mach number over here is M1 in the upstream. So what will be happening in the downstream? When we will be going, we will be having some pressure P2, and we will be having sudden increase of pressure in the downstream of the shock wave. So we will be saying, say P2 will be greater than P1, and suddenly this transformation will be happening. If suddenly my P1 is changing to P2, which is more, so I will be having some fall of velocity. And this effect of shock wave will be felt in the region where its influence is strong. So we will be finding some portion close to this nozzle. We will be finding some portion close to this wedge. So this is a wedge section actually. It's not a nozzle. Okay. So we'll be finding some section very close to the wedge tip where our Mach number will go down because pressure is increasing. So velocity will be actually decreasing, and because of the decrease of velocity, we will be finding some section where Mach number, say if I call it as M2, that will be less than 1. And we will be having then in the remaining portion behind this boundary, once again our Mach number, say if I call this as M3, that will be becoming greater than 1. Okay. So over here, what will be happening? This particular transition boundary which I am having over here, for this boundary, value of Mach number will be equal to 1. So you can see that in the upstream of the shock wave, we are having supersonic flow. So because of the supersonic nature of the flow, here we will be having nature of equation as hyperbolic. Okay. And when we will be seeing in the downstream of the shock wave, particularly the region where Mach number is less than 1, there our nature of the equation will be elliptic, and once again this nature will be actually transferring from elliptic to hyperbolic. Okay. So this is one of the physical situation where we will be having actually involvement of mixed nature of the equations. Okay. So these kind of problems are referred to as ill-posed problem, because in between our domain actually we are finding that nature of the equation is changing, and if we have to determine the solution of such type of problem, that solution is also actually cumbersome. Okay. So this is one example. Now let me give you one more example where what you have to do, I have considered, say, one transient convection equation. Okay, so I have considered some transient convection equation, and if you see, the order of this transient convection equation is nothing but one only. Okay, so I have single order transient convection equation. Now you have to comment about the nature of this equation, whether this equation is parabolic, hyperbolic, or elliptic. Can you all tell me how to determine the order of this nature of this particular equation? So what I have nothing but one transient term, and over here I have one convection term. So I can say, after looking into this equation, that in this particular equation, temperature is nothing but function of x comma t. If temperature is function of x comma t, I can say dt will be equal to del t by del x times dx plus del t by del t times small t into dt. Okay, so by involving these two equations, I can write my characteristic matrix as u infinity, and then I will be having with dt as 1 only. Okay, and over here I will be having, say, dx and dt. So this is my, say, characteristic matrix A. Now if I have to find out the characteristic direction, for finding out characteristic direction, we have to take determinant of A equal to 0. So if you take determinant of A equal to 0, what you will be getting? U infinity into dt minus dx will be equal to 0. So from here I will be finding that dt by dx is equal to 1 by u infinity. Okay, so if you see over here, what we are finding that dt by dx is becoming equal to 1 by u infinity. So this may give you some idea that this particular equation is nothing but of which nature. Can you tell me? If I am finding dt by dx equal to 1 by u infinity, what will be the nature of equation? Can you all hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
sir,
sir.
we can.
Okay, so what I am saying over here, if you try to find out what will be the nature of equation, we are finding a unique slope. So it will give us some idea that say equation is parabolic. But in actual, if you see, this is nothing but our convection term over here. So if we are having involvement of the convection term, our nature of the equation will not be exactly parabolic. So that's why what we have to do, we have to actually further apply some operations, and based on these we have to actually determine the nature of the equation. So let me tell you these further transformations, what we have to do in order to find out the nature of this equation. So what I will be doing, let me first take the derivative of this equation with reference to del by del t. So if I take derivative, then I'll be finding del square t by del t square plus u infinity times del square t by del x del t equal to 0. Say this is my number 1. Then if I take now derivative with reference to del by del x, then I'll be finding del square t by del t del x plus u infinity times del square t divided by del x square equal to 0. Okay, now what you do, now what we can do, now I can actually multiply this second equation with u infinity, and then I can take minus. So what I will be doing, 1 minus second into u infinity. So if I apply this operation, what I'll be getting? Can you tell me? I'll be getting del square t divided by del t square plus u infinity square into del square t divided by del x square equal to 0. Now if you see this equation, can you tell me what is the nature of this particular equation?
Sir, it's minus u infinity.
Okay, yeah, I'll be getting over here minus u infinity. Yes, thanks for correcting. Okay, now can you tell me what is the nature of this equation? So if you see, it is now taking the form of nothing but your simple diffusion like equation. If you consider over here, we are having one second order derivative term in x and second order derivative term in times. Okay, so this equation is actually now taking the nature of a, can you tell me?
Hyperbolic.
Yes, it is now taking the nature of a hyperbolic equation. Okay, so this is how actually what we have to do, based if in some equation we are only getting the single eigenvalue and single characteristic, based on that many times we will not be able to comment on the complete nature of the equation. Okay, so that's why what we have to do, we have to every time try to develop some characteristic matrix which from which at least we can find out two different eigenvalues of that characteristic matrix. And once we are able to find out the two different eigenvalues, then we will be correctly able to find out the nature of the equation. Okay, so this is one very, very important point you should take care while we are actually doing the classification of governing equations. We should not immediately jump into the conclusion. Okay. Now, let me briefly tell you about the different terms which we are having involved in our equations, that if we have to classify each of the individual term, then what will be their nature. Okay. So if you see our generalized scalar transport equation, I have told you del rho phi by del t plus divergence of rho phi into v vector will be equal to divergence of gamma into gradient of phi plus some source term. And when we are considering the Navier-Stokes equation, in Navier-Stokes equation we are having some additional term as pressure gradient also. Okay, divergence gradient of P, and that too we are having as a negative gradient of P. So now if you see in our equations, we are having some transient term, then we are having some convection term, then we are having one diffusion term, and then we are having some source term, and then we have some pressure gradient term. Okay, so pressure gradient term and source term are not included particularly in the highest order part, so that's why now we will be keeping them aside. But if we talk about the transient term, we have already seen wherever we are having involvement of time, there our nature of equation is becoming nothing but parabolic. So it means time always enforces solution to propagate in some unique direction. So that's why transient term, if it is involved in an equation, it will be having always nature as parabolic. When we were having the convection term, we have seen that in case of convection term, always we will be having nothing but what kind of nature?
Hyperbolic.
Hyperbolic. And when we are having diffusion term, then what kind of nature we will be having? We will be having elliptic nature. Okay. And apart from that, we have also seen when we are having supersonic flows, always we will be having Mach number greater than 1, and for all the type of supersonic flow, whether it is steady, whether it is transient, whether it is inviscid, for all the types of supersonic flows, we will be always having the nature of equation as nothing but hyperbolic. Okay, so this is nothing but with reference to our actual equations which we will be solving in this particular course on CFD, what nature different individual terms are contributing to our governing equation. This I have actually summarized over here. Okay, now I will stop at this point and we will have further discussion on the concept of discretization, which is actual concept which we will be starting in our CFD course from our next